How is everybody? Good?
Hanging in there.
Cool. Cool. My printer broke, so I'm going to be doing a lot of toggling, and you'll see my eyes going in different directions because I'm looking at several monitors here. And I'm just looking at our agenda here. So we're going to start up and get going. Our agenda for the typical agenda item has the review and approval of previous meeting minutes. We didn't actually send out any minutes from the last meeting because Kathy was absent and the meeting's recorded. So at some point, we'll have to go through and probably type them up from the video or something like that, and I'll figure that out. But I don't think there's anything for us to approve this time around. And I don't think there was anything major other than discussion last time, so I don't think we're missing out on anything we need to highlight. So that would bring us into our number 2 item, which is the rear door project update and materials review for bid package. So what's going on here is clicking on more windows for me to bring.
So my apologies for having missed the last meeting. So you may have covered this in the last meeting, but when we spoke, I think maybe at the meeting before, there'd been some conversation around the Albion Street. I forget the official name of the organization, but there was some talk about maybe being able to leverage maybe some activities coming out of that work stream, and maybe even thinking about maybe doing the ramp in the front versus in the back. So if you could just bring us up to date on, did that progress? And then, because it looks like we're back to the rear door, which is great. I'm just curious what had happened to that other initiative.
Okay. Yeah. So what happened there was we weren't able to get into the initial project. We tried like heck to get into it, and we weren't able to do it due to their timeline concerns. And one of the other big things that was part of also in addition to the timeline concern was just this idea that what do you call it? We needed a certain width in the front for a ramp, and I pressed really hard to try to just get a confirmation that we would be given that width, when a future ramp did come in, whenever that future ramp was, whether it was 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. I was really looking for an assurance from all the various players that when it did come time to that, we would have enough space for that. I was not given that assurance. DPW would not give me that assurance. They couldn't give me anything that could guarantee that we should spend more time on the front, because the plan, and that's probably the big thing that did come out of the last meeting of discussion, was that if we, even though we didn't have a ramp right away, so what happened with that project was the project was going to start at Main Street and go up Albion. Due to financial concerns and time constraints, they've moved that project to begin at Foster Street and to go down to the rest of Albion. Our building is not going to be part of the phase 1 of the Envision, I think is what they call that. The Envision downtown.
Yeah, I couldn't remember either. So
there's all these names. Well, that's why we're called the ACE, because we didn't want Wakefield art in our name. That being said, there's pros and cons to that. The con to that is we have to wait longer. The pro to that is that we're going to be included in the downtown proper section of that project, which won't happen next spring, will happen after that. Could be a year, could be 2, could be 3. We don't really know.
Okay.
But we've indicated extreme interest and consideration, to really do stuff to the front of our building. And that could include the ramp. That can include, like a larger sort of patio thing, and like a promenade kind of thing. Jonathan was working on where we really made it, a more walkable space with really like doubling out that sidewalk is one of the ideas. But that conversation, really hasn't evolved, except for the fact that our sidewalks in front of our building are now in phase 2 of the Envision project. And the net of that is we switched back to the back door because we don't really know when phase 2 of that project's going to go. And our primary concern at this point, and the goal that we're trying to reach and the funding that we have for, is for ADA compliance. And so waiting for that second phase was an option, but not a requirement to gain ADA compliance. There was a lot of opportunity. We spent a lot of time with due diligence. It didn't work out. They couldn't guarantee us the width because the idea would have been if we pivoted and we did a door on the front of the building, we could actually do the entire door, and then we were hoping to offset the costs of the ramp into the project so that we could build our door, and then whenever they got around to the project, we'd have a ramp that went to our door. We would just be done with the door first. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we couldn't be guaranteed the width that there would ever be a ramp on the front. It's highly likely, but you know, it's also strongly unlikely. I'd say it's like 60-40 maybe. But the whole thing was we just couldn't guarantee it at all, and we couldn't even anticipate a time frame. And so we felt, you know, in the consensus of our group and the many conversations is that we want to move towards ADA compliance, all the plans that we have and where we're at, and that we couldn't just pause on a maybe. Now, what could happen, and you know, would be wonderful what happens is in the future, we get ADA compliance, but in the future, when downtown matures more, we could also have a handicap entrance to the front. It's just not going to be now.
But and that's fine. Okay. That's really good information. Thank you for going back over that history. I appreciate it.
Okay. So we pivoted back to the back door. Looking at, let's see here. So we're looking at, so the item that we're talking about is the rear door project update, the materials review for the bid package. So Michael has communicated with Ann Waite, the business manager, and they are progressing forward on what's needed for the bid is a second set of drawings. And, you know, it's called a bid set of drawings, basically. So we have our drawings, which are, you know, fairly robust, but you need a more robust set of drawings to put it out to bid. And so Mike is working with Ann on that. I'm working with Ann on talking to abutters about what we're doing so that they're aware of it. There's a big section of the rear entrance off of our property that's sort of a pathway and an easement to our property. And we want to speak with them to begin a dialogue of awareness for starters. And then secondarily, you know, participation or, you know, possibly permission to, you know, dress up that rear entrance. So if people are coming through the fire lane off of Chestnut Street, you know, we want the two abutters that are connected to that to know that, you know, it's labeled a fire lane. It's really an easement. It might also be a fire lane, but we wanted to let them know that that was going to be, you know, being used more actively as a path. So, you know, and that we would be interested in making it more visually pleasing. So, you know, let them know that, hey, there's an easement. We're going to start using it. People haven't used it. And here's like, you know, roughly what's going on. And, you know, sort of seek their blessing as to, you know, a collaborative approach, if not just on a permission basis of they're aware that we're making a more visually pleasing entrance to our building for the handicap access.
Yep, communication's a good thing, transparency.
Yeah, so that's where we're going with that. To that end, we've gone with Michael, and so he's making the design plans, and he is, let me go back here. I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see, share screen. And we're going to go with mine and say share. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the email that Mike sent, and this is for us to discuss right now. Not necessarily in a binding kind of way, more of in a working collaborative kind of way. And I'll work with him more on the specifics of it. But he fleshes out some, you know, some specific items for as far as materials requests. Now, when we did this last time, we left basically all of it up to him, and we just read it very cursorily. Yeah, I'm messing that up. But anyways, we just sort of read it, and we kind of agreed with this. This time, we're focusing in on a little more detail, and really only because we're better at it this time. The first time that we did it, we didn't really know what we were doing. He gave us the package. It looked good. We looked up all the materials. This one, he's given us some input, and I specifically point to things like doors. You know, we got doors that we weren't satisfied with last time. He specified those doors, and we were very happy with them. They didn't show up the way that we wanted them. That's a problem. That's not going to happen this time, hopefully. But as we specify materials, he's highlighted out a few things that we wanted to get team input on. This email right here, what do you call it? Has pavers listed, has exterior lighting listed, has exterior doors listed. And I've gone through it. I sent it to everyone to go through. And I think I'll just start. I could, pop up a few pictures. This is the paver set that he is leaning towards, including in the bid package. There's two other paver sets that were in that email. This one and this one.
And when you say the set, is it both the color and the shape and the approximate layout? I'll call it the design of the tiles.
I'm gonna say that it's the shape and the design, and that the color is something that can be selected post bid package, because there's an array of colors that are available. It's really just the material selection. I mean, we can specify color now. And before the package comes out, I could circle back with people, but I think colors are an option. It's really just which model.
Yep.
So I don't know, I'm hoping that people had a chance to look at this. There's some lighting options here. I'm bringing up this first one here. I think this is one of the ones he recommended. I tried to call him today to talk about it. I personally think it's boring myself, but hey, that's just me. He was talking about something a little more interesting, and I don't think they're in orders with the way that he described them, but this is another fixture that was on his list in the back. And then let's see here. Let's go to a third one. I got all kinds of screens going on here, and boom, 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 boom. We got a light coming up. And then this one, another one that's not really something I like. Does anybody have any, input on, say, let's start with pavers. Does anybody want to talk about pavers? Make a point to make sure something specific about the pavers, other than what you just said, Kathy, is included in our bid package discussion with him?
I don't know if the color has already been selected, but I'm not a big fan. I'm not a fan of the random colors. I like one uniform, but that's just me personally.
So when we look at that, we're looking at,
I like the first one.
That was the recommended one.
Yeah, I think the second one looks like the person kind of lost their way.
I think that was intentional design, Joy. But
I know, I'm not liking
the middle one. Is my least favorite one. I like the first one, and I like the third one.
Okay.
I like the first one.
I liked 1 and 3 also.
Okay.
It's not a big space back there, so it's almost like you don't want it to be overly busy. So this seems to be, and Wakefield downtown is pretty traditional and the building's traditional, so it seems like we don't want to go wild on the pavers. So I think you're right, Joy. Number 1 is just more uniform.
And that's the one that was recommended.
Okay.
It's called Plankstone.
Well, that was easy.
Does anybody else have any input on that they want to air?
So that just looks to be like a grayish color. It's a little hard to tell. It looks like they're more grays than browns.
So what I'll do is I'll put a note to talk to Mike about the specific color, and let him know that we agree with choice 1 most likely, and that we're interested in more color specificity.
Yes.
I mean, the paved area isn't going to be that big, right?
No, super small.
So
it's way smaller than what we're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
It's literally like, look at the doors on this, and then just pull off about 6 feet, and that's it.
Right.
And ours, like in this case, I mean, ours would probably be the other direction. They wouldn't be perpendicular. They'd be the same way coming off of the doors, and our doors would be similar to those, but that's one of the next topics.
So do they meet up? They meet up with Hot Top, right? That's what's next to it. I mean, it would be paved over. Where it's going to be paved, what surrounds it is just like a Hot Top parking lot, right? The
Right.
black.
And then what happens from there in the future potentially is that we work with the abutters. There's the possibility that beyond this project that could be extended to Chestnut Street, but that's not in the cards for right now.
Right.
It may not ever be in the cards, but yeah, it comes off the back door and basically dead ends on the parking lot. It's between the back door. That whole area will be regraded so that it has either no grade or very minimal grade. That's ADA compliant to the driveway of the parking lot.
Okay, that sounds good.
So there we go. We've got that. As far as exterior lighting, does anybody have an opinion? I'll just hit them all three in a row. This is the basic one. This would be like on the side of the door to light up that area. And he indicates in the text of his stuff, and I'll talk to him at more length about that there's going to be more than one fixture. I think there might be one on either side. There might be some on the side of the building. I need to dig into that detail. This is one option. If this was the option picked and we had, say, 3 or 4 of them, one on either side of the door and then like 2 on the back of the building, they would all be like this, or they could all be like this. Another option was this one right here. And I can get more into this with him. This may be your first time seeing this if you didn't have the opportunity prior to tonight's discussion.
I don't understand that one. I think I need to see it more in context.
I know, Joy, I felt the same way.
I don't get it.
It looks like acrylic that's lit up with light, side lighting almost.
Yeah.
My concern about that one is that it's not going to be bright enough. I think that area is so dark back there that I want to make sure that we have something that's going to be light enough for somebody coming through there.
Handicapped.
Yeah.
And durable too. Somehow, I don't know why that just doesn't look that durable to me, whereas maybe the other ones aren't either. And the other thing that I would just ask about is, the cost of the light bulbs and the easy replaceability for the light bulbs so that we're getting something that's, maintainable going forward.
That's a good point.
And I think what'll happen as this sort of evolves is I'll give him our feedback. And what it might not be specified exactly as to the exterior lighting. It may be changed into an allotment for the lighting. So it'll be like, we're going to have 3 fixtures selected from a catalog. Here's another one. We're going to have 3 fixtures selected for a catalog, and there could be a budget item associated with it, not to exceed this many dollars. And so then that could go out to bid with that specified in an abstract way, and we could come back, once it's out there, and as long as we go within the cash value that's been assigned to the bid, we're fine. If we changed our mind down the road, we'd have to, pony up the money. So for the bid, it all bids as one package, and this could just say, $7,000 for lights or something like that. And then, we could then pick it, and it could still make the bid package. And so like, if we don't know which light we want exactly, that's not going to hold us up like right now.
Yeah. So one of the thoughts I had is if we're going to put lights on either side of the door, which is a possibility, the second light is kind of still, I think, is odd. So I'm kind of ruling that one out for now. This one the one that you were showing, which is the one that's facing downward, is more like a trapezoid facing downward. That might be great, like on the building to, shine light on the walkway. But then maybe there's an opportunity to have maybe those first ones or something a little bit more visually interesting than this is on either side of the door, without going too crazy. I'm not trying to get too cosmetic here, but I'm wondering if, does it have to be the same fixture in all situations, or could we have maybe something different on the wall than we have on either side of the door?
I think we totally could have something different on the wall than the door, and I'll ask for more.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
I'll ask for more detail on that.
Yep.
All right, so that's a little bit of materials review. Does he have anything? All right, so then he has got doors in here to take a look at some stuff. This is pretty boring stuff, but it's, this looks like the doors. If you've ever been, I think WCAT has doors like this, and there's doors like this, town hall, schools. This is a pretty common industrial door, this one here. I don't have really any issues with it. The window size, the other one he has is this one. And the picture's not as good, but if you see it right here, my conversation with him that we're gonna have, and again, this is I share in all this data, not so that we make specific decisions, because I think that we'll leave a portion of this outside of things that we have strong opinions on to Mike to handle. That's sort of his job, is to material it out. But I think that there's going to be 2 doors to make this happen, and they're both going to have automatic door thingies on them where you push the handicap thing.
Okay. Yep.
So there's a door on the exterior, which is the back, and that door might be more like this one right here, if you can see it up on the screen, except it will probably have maybe a smaller window, because since it's sort of hidden, kind of, that would be a place that someone could maybe smash a window or vandalize, where you might want a more substantial door on the exterior. But then when you came in the building, and you hit the next door. So there's the exterior door, and then there's like a vestibule, and then you go through the next door, which gets you in our actual building. So the exterior door might be more solid with a little window on the top, whereas the interior door might be windowed the whole way, or have like 2 windows on top of each other.
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah. Not a final thing, just the talking points I'm going to have with him when we talk about picking them. But as far as these commercial doors go, even if it went, even if for some reason we went with like these ones, which look a little more susceptible due to the low visual, I can't even think of how it says, just the obscure nature, or wherever the remote nature of the door. That's the word. The remote nature of the door, where somebody could vandalize or try to break in or something. It's easier to smash the window. I think I might just be talking out of my head. These are just ideas that are out there.
Does it have to have glass? Does it have to have glass? Is that a regulation?
I don't think it has to have glass, but I think it probably a little.
I'd like a little bit of glass, because right now when you go to use that back door, that's the exterior door.
Yeah.
You can't see who or what's out there, and you don't really need a lot of glass, because it's not a visually stimulating area. So I don't know that we need a lot of glass, but it would be nice to have an ability to see who's coming or going.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Now the good part about having the bigger window on the interior door is that would then open up light to come into the gallery. So you've got that vestibule that's going to have 2 new windows in it and this door. So even if the door was solid on the exterior and the interior door from the vestibule into the gallery had windows, that would bring light into the gallery, and the light from the windows in the vestibule would come through there, and a solid door on the back wouldn't impact the ability for light to come in.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
All right. Does anybody have any other comments as far as the materials and the stuff that has been presented that they want to communicate, discuss, or otherwise regarding the rear door and the assembly of the bid package? I'm going to end up talking to Mike a lot about what we just talked about and reviewing the notes, and I'll have him send back. If I feel that we need to look at it again, I will, but if not, I will defer like we did the first time to him completing the materials list for our bid package. And again, if something totally messed up happens and our bid package specifies it wrong, we can always, I mean, I'm sure the package will be solid and complete, but if, I don't know, we decide that there's some new light fixture we want or something, bottom line is we just have to pay for it. It'll just be outside of the bid package. Make sense?
I think the only thing I feel I'm starting to feel a little strongly about is I think Donna was the one that made the comment about, it's an older style building, we don't want to probably be too crazy. I probably don't care so much about the fixtures that are on the building, but I want the doorway itself to be welcoming, and I think part of that, the exterior door, to be a welcoming, visually pleasing, and so I think the light fixtures for me that would be on either side of the door, I'm more interested in those and how that ties in with the whole design of the door and that whole back entrance from the outside.
Okay, I'll get more data from Mike. I'll try to get
Okay.
some more pictures and stuff out to people. We're getting yeah, I'll just get more pictures. I mean, that's all.
Okay, cool.
Very reasonable stuff. Like I said, I think we're in like a budget range, not necessarily nothing crazy, and there's always options to change, but we just have to specify things out inside of the initial package range. Okay. Anything else? We're talking rear door project update. We're talking materials review. We talked about the abutters. I don't have much more to say about the rear door. And again, I'll open it up here for anybody who has anything they want to say about the rear door. Item 2 on our agenda. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go on to item number 3, which is our sort of bathroom update. We had a sewer issue, and let's see if I can find, where did I do that?
Actually, Chris, I was curious, who's been using the building? Because it seems like there was some, tile stuff moved around, and there definitely have been people in there because the toilet paper's all gone, and someone's been using paper towels.
Officially, no one's been using the building. You and I know that to be a lie. So what happened was, prior to your event, I went in and inspected the building. I go in the building like once or twice a week at least, to see what's going on, and we've got things going on in the bathroom. I hadn't been to the building in like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but I went in on the weekend before your event on the Wednesday, and I discovered, come on, this. You see that on your screen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And click. Come on, where's my mouse? Where'd you go? Get rid of the music. All right, so that, and then this one. So I don't know what that is. I mean, I had ideas as to what it might be. Did someone use it and was really sloppy? Did the sewer back up?
When we were at that meeting, it looked to me like the water pressure had dropped.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Or had come up and then receded.
And then dropped.
I think yeah.
Because there wasn't a lot of water in the bowl.
So I reported this to DPW on the Monday, and I just said, hey, Arts Collaborative's in there with a health department approved, socially distanced thing on Wednesday. And I just, I sent them the pictures and told them I didn't know what was going on. Was it a sewage backup? Was someone using the bathroom? At the time, this picture that I have up here was like the toilet was overflowing. The message I got back was that they have no idea what happened. They've been going in and flushing the toilets every couple of days now, but they have no idea what happened, and they're keeping an eye on it, and they're quote unquote looking into it.
Okay.
So I don't know. What's weird about this is our bathrooms have been completed since, February or March. And, we go in there. I mean, I go in there, like I said, a couple times a week, typically, just to check on things. And none of this had happened before. So like if the water was bad or scaling or hard water or whatever the terms are for water that does things to your plumbing, it would have been, I would have expected to have seen that by now. It's odd that the last time that I was in there was maybe, first, which your thing was October 21st. So maybe it had been 14 days, maybe at that point, because I had gone away, that I hadn't been in there for this to all of a sudden show up. Because I figured if there was bad water issues, we would have known about it, which leads me to believe towards a sewer backup or something. But
yeah,
obviously something's going on. It's intermittent, which is terrible because, problems that aren't consistent are the hardest ones to solve. That's straight from just software stuff. You know what I mean? If you can reproduce the error, that's great. If you have no idea when it's going to happen, so it's been reported. I mean, I think the good news is we don't think it's people using the bathroom in an inappropriate way, but there are people using the building, and that is definitely a concern. Something I, want to point out to Jonathan is that we've had this problem in the past, and we know people go in there and do things, and we don't know how or why, and we're always told it never happened.
We, I know we had talked before
Chris,
about.
Do we have any sense of who is getting in there? I mean, who
put a
who
camera
have
in there
access to the building?
There are only I think there's 8 or 9 keys. So what happened was we've had access and security issues with the building over time, where when we were having construction and doing various things, oftentimes we'd come by and find the lights left on. We'd find the doors wide open. And it was because DPW is just handing out keys to contractors and not tracking them and not project managing them. They're supposed to be present whenever a third-party vendor comes in there. We know that's not what happened last time when we did construction. And we've talked to Ann about, when we do this next project, it's going to be very different. When we worked with Chris Pierce, he kind of ignored us, and basically they just handed out keys like candy. We started keeping real good track of that, like literally every day. And I started documenting the instances of the doors being left open, the lights being left on, and just calling them in every single time. Not to be a pain, but to have, a track record and an audit trail to just show that we're not crazy or overreacting to any individual thing. Once we did that, the DPW response was, we have to change all the locks because, what we said couldn't possibly be true. It has to be it's not them. It has to be somebody else with a key. There's too many keys. So we rekeyed the building. Now there's only 9 keys out there, and 5 of them are held by DPW people. I have 2 keys. I have 1 key and a backup key. Joy has a key. Kathy has a key. Doug has a key. And that's it, right, guys?
Yep.
So we have.
I think so.
We have a list, and I think the list has 8 or 9 keys. I have 2, so that brings you down to 7. Doug 6, Joy 5, Kathy 4. So then there's 4 people. So there's 4 people in DPW that have keys, as far as we know, unless they've issued further keys and they're serialized and whatever. So it's only people that have permission, have keys, or DPW, and a handful of us.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, if there is something where you see that we continue to have issues with that, let me know, and I'm happy to escalate that as we need to, just to make sure that we're keeping the building safe and secure.
Yeah, and I think things will change when hopefully the pandemic ends or subsides and we start using the building regularly. I mean, when we're right now it's we just don't go in there enough. But when there's no pandemic and when things calm down a bit, and in the before time, we're in there way more, and we would notice these things. But I think the big thing was, obviously these toilets are a mess, and I don't think it was someone pooping. I just don't. I think it's sewer and water and whatever.
No, I think it was a sewer. I think it was probably some kind of water table issue happening that just doesn't look like It looks like there was a real cause to it. Chris, and the other thing that I'm glad you mentioned to Ann was, the next time when we're working with contractors, oftentimes contractors are subbed out, and they may not have the personal stake or attachment to the building that some of us may have. A lot of times we would see things left on like a glass case, heavy tools put in places that just didn't make sense, and getting the place cleaned up after construction was a challenge. And I recognize during construction, that's a different ball game. It's going to be messy. It's going to be dirty. But I think talking to her about ensuring that anybody who's working in the building is responsible and cares for it the way that any of us do is an important conversation. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. And I mean, that's definitely the big takeaway I think we had from the previous construction is, there was no project management. There was nobody really minding the store. Well, I mean, except for me, and that wasn't really my job. But I mean, I was in there, at 6 o'clock in the morning, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at 10 o'clock at night, every day for 2.5 months, and working full time, so it wasn't easy. But yeah, that was a problem. So, we've rekeyed the building since then. So any contractor that may have gotten a key in the past can't get in the building anymore. There's allegedly only 9 keys, and we're going to have to tighten it up that once the bid package goes out and a vendor is selected and stuff, and we get back to that time where we're at probably like a year ago, December, right when we were beginning this project. We just got to be really specific. It's going to be day-to-day updates, because just too much went wrong last time. So the good news is we've got, a whole new team on it. So it's going to be Ann in charge of it. She knows what she's doing. She's responsive. And, so I just hope for good things. I don't have any reason to believe that it will go the way that it went before. And, it's our second time, so we're better at it now. So let's see. Oh, the tiles. Tile work still needs to be done. I've mentioned it to her. I told her what it is. Given the state of the bid package and other projects we have going on, I haven't harped on the fact that we need to fix that tile. I think it's only it's a short-term fix. I try to keep my communications with DPW focused because, we just try to stay focused, keep our eye on the ball. And right now it's all about getting the rear bid package out. And I don't want to distract anybody because if the tile gets fixed now or in 4 months, it doesn't really matter. We'll have a few events. We've got the tile, we've got the materials. That guy left it there. We got the right materials there, and then he quit or disappeared. So it's something that can be handled. It's on the list, and I'm sure she'll do a fine job with it. So let's see. That's does anybody have anything else to say about the bathrooms or, and Kathy, we're going to go right into you next with the Arts Collab meeting review, but I figured I put this item before that because I figured, Kathy and Joy, when you were there doing that, obviously you saw the bathrooms. And then let's just jump into number 4 and talk about the Arts Collaborative. What?
Do you mind if I ask you to change the picture that's on the screen?
Which one?
Toilet. We're done looking at that.
The toilet picture.
Oh, is that still on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Weird. Hold on, I don't see it. No, I saw. I had my agenda. I have my screen shared, and I thought I had the agenda up. Proposal. The toilet.
I just have one more thing about the bathroom. Just one more thing.
I gotta unshare my screen.
4. Chris, does Ann? Is Ann from the DPW?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Ann
Wait.
Yeah. So she saw the bathroom, right?
She saw the pictures. Whether she went there and actually saw it in person, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking more about the tile job. Does she realize how bad of a job it was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, I mean, it's that border tile. All the materials don't match. Okay. They're not installed correctly. They're not level. They're not grouted properly. I mean, you start off with the materials don't match. They weren't all out of the same set. You can't even use them together. They have to be torn out. I mean, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
It never could have happened.
Well, because I'm just hoping that moving forward that she would know that. So potentially, you wouldn't bring that person back for anything ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason why she's in charge now and our previous person is no longer.
Okay. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure she was on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, she's totally on that. And again, it's sort of like, I'm just trying to prioritize. I mean, we went over it a lot at the beginning when she first came on board, and we did a lot of visionary stuff, and we talked about the front entrance and all these other things. And so she's aware, and it'll hit the top of the list again, probably in a month or 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah, it definitely is not a high priority. The bid package for the back door, the focus there, I think is more the priority. So that makes sense.
And when the bid package happens, it goes out, and then, then it basically, you got to wait 30 to 60 days before you find out what happens. So that it's over, then we can go to the next thing. All right, Kathy, Joy, you're on.
What are we
Joy, you want me to go?
Yeah, what are we?
We're talking about our conversation on 1021. So the ACW got, the ACW. So Jonathan, the Arts Collaborative of Wakefield is a nonprofit group here in town that uses the ACE building as its primary home. We meet until COVID. We met on a monthly basis and would hold regular events, probably a handful, maybe more than half a dozen actually, different events throughout the year in the building, some of which had become annual and actually were very well attended. So the Arts Collaborative is very thankful to have this building to be able to use, and is looking forward to post-COVID being able to go back to normal and do some of those events. But in the summertime, we tried to do a couple of outdoor events. Events is the wrong word, sort of social gatherings for the members to get together. And we, at one of those meetings down at the lake by the gazebo, people were talking about, looking forward and hoping that COVID would end sooner than later. So the thought was, let's get together in October. Can we use the building? We worked with Chris to be able to, have a meeting. We worked with
Jonathan
the health
to get that going.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Jonathan.
And I really can't take credit for it. I think, you guys were meeting within the, the public health requirements that were in place. So it was a pretty easy sell, and appreciate Ruth Clay allowing that to move forward.
Yes. So we had 6 people come in, and we sat, 6 feet away from each other and wore our masks. And it was really to see where the conversation would go. What can we do to support one another during this time? Is there any interest in trying to do any kind of events either in the building? Has anybody seen any successful venues or models that are working elsewhere that could be something we could emulate and try and do, especially as we get into the winter months? What do we want to look to for the spring? We have typically in the first and second quarters of the year, we have a couple of annual events, the Art and Edibles, and usually a floral type show that we do. And so, is there interest in that? And so some of the feedback basically was that, many people are apprehensive about being indoors, especially as we're getting into the winter time. So, I think that makes people nervous. We have some older members who are, concerned about that. People were thinking, nobody really had any good suggestions of successful venues or models that they had seen that were indoors or even outdoors that they thought we could do in the wintertime. So there was some talk about, do we even want to be doing Zoom meetings? No one was particularly really interested in doing a lot of meetings if we don't really have a lot of activities that we're working towards. There was some talk about, promoting our website and some other things that we can do just amongst ourselves that didn't really involve building usage. And the basic agreement was meet again in January to assess, where COVID's at, and then, what can we be looking forward to doing in the spring? We're all eager to do something, but again, that fear of being indoors. Maybe there's a possibility for the Arts Collaborative to do something, either maybe where the First Baptist Church used to be. There's that common space outside. That came up as a possibility. Maybe doing something at another church in town somewhere that has, big parking and outdoor areas, or maybe doing something down at the space where the farmers market is currently now. That's not really used in the springtime. But there was basically, agreement to get together in January again after the holidays and start to look forward. Joy, do you want to add anything to that?
COVID sucks.
I'm sure yeah. Yeah, that was the consensus.
Yeah.
Yeah, be creative. Be creative, support one another, be kind. Those were the things that people were talking about. Any questions from anybody?
I would throw out there, it's not a question, but I would throw out there, I'm always a fan of, if we do something in the future, there is the opportunity, if we did do an inside show, that we could have, we used to try to pile everybody in on 1 or 2 nights, that we could have some sort of inside thing where you would have times over, say, a 4 or 6 week period where two nights a week or something, we could be open with protocols of only, a few people at a time to see things. But there is an opportunity to come indoors in small groups, spaced apart. We don't have an event for it yet, but I just keep pushing for usage.
Yeah.
I think but I know where people are at.
We did talk about that, Chris, actually, and this is where human nature comes in. It's the WIFM. That's what's in it for me. Kind of perspective was, if people to do that, you almost need like a staff or someone. Let me back up. Sorry, I'm not expressing myself well. If this were a museum or another facility that had paid staff to make those arrangements and stay on top of those things and do the advertising and do all the logistics that goes along with an event, that's sort of a different scenario than a group of volunteers it's a stressful time as it is already. And we had some frank conversation about this, and people were like, yeah, that's kind of interesting, but that's a lot of work and effort for maybe not much return for me as an individual artist. So, and maybe that's a short-sighted view, but, we really, I've talked about this at 2 recent, that meeting and then the meeting when we were down at the lake and really trying to push, say, there's an opportunity here. If someone can come up with an idea, there is space and we could make it work. I just can't get anybody to latch onto it.
Fair enough. Human nature. Yeah, I mean, yep. I'm just an advocate for it. I consider myself an advocate for all this stuff, so I always bring it back up and just say, let's keep considering it. Let's keep considering it. And then just something else, and I think Jonathan knows this and everybody else knows this, but, we're excited to have the Arts Collaborative as our in-house artist inventory is how the state looks at it. So regarding, the Mass Cultural Council and their various budgets and stuff like that, the big thing, why we position the Arts Collaborative as our Wakefield Artist Inventory sort of group attached to our building, our in-house group, is because the state and the various funding partners want to see that you have an artist inventory of your area, and the Arts Collaborative, we thank for being a part of our group and being our in-house group, and it's important.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Kathy, I was just going to say, to the extent that, there is like an outdoor event that folks are thinking about gravitating towards, and if you were looking at Hall Park or, any other parkland, I mean, I think there'd be, universal support on the council, obviously not speaking for my colleagues, but I think there would be huge support on the council for allowing that to move forward and getting that space available.
That's great to know. Yes, thank you.
No problem.
So in January, we'll regroup and I might be getting in touch with you.
Great.
So I think that sort of finishes off number 4, which is the Arts Collaborative meeting review, October 21st. Typically in our agendas, especially pre-COVID, we usually do an event review topic, and then we do the future events review. At the moment, our future events have more to do with infrastructure than they have to do with actual events. But I'd like to just open up the floor for anybody that wants to talk about any future events they're interested in or just want to throw out in front of everybody outside of infrastructure. All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to item number 6, which is our front projection sign. We've got, at the end, we'll just talk about the invoice a little bit because we didn't have enough people for a vote last time. I don't think there's a problem there, but I'll talk about the process. We've got our invoice, which is somewhere sitting around $6,000, which we've gotten feedback from everybody that they're okay with that. Again, we'll take a vote on that when we have enough people. But I want to talk about the ZBA process to get a sign. So we've all reviewed the sign. We looked at the sign before. If anybody has any questions about the sign, definitely feel free to ask now or ask later. But everybody should have the detail there. Getting signs in Wakefield is a funny thing. it's hard. You know, there you get a lot of different answers from a lot of different people. And so I've been working on it. And, you know, I guess I'll just skip it. It was very challenging. So the good news is I've gone through that challenge. The sort of one of the head sign guys, Jim McBain, worked with Bob and I when we did all the sign stuff that everybody's reviewed and looked at. And when we talked about last time, we talked about the various sizes of the signs, and we pumped up the sign about 20% to put it in scale with the building so that it looked right. And that was a suggestion with Bob, and we reviewed this with Jim McBain, who's the head of the design review board or committee. It's also called the Wakefield Sign Bylaw Committee, I think. Anyways, we worked with him prior. We all in our previous ACE meetings have reviewed the drawings and stuff. And then we worked with Jim again. And we actually had a meeting today at 4 o'clock. Myself and Bob Sardella appeared via Zoom in front of the design review board, also known as the sign committee. So it's sort of like a two-step process. This design review board reviews everything, and they make a recommendation or they don't make a recommendation. And then you take that recommendation or non-recommendation to the zoning board of appeals. And then you basically have the same meeting kind of over again. And they look for the recommendation for the design review board. And then they go in and they analyze it again. And if they have any questions, they ask them at that point. But if you come in with a recommendation, which we now have because of the meeting I attended today with the design review board, generally things go favorably. So the process basically is you go before the design review board. Once you do that, they write you a letter of thumbs up or thumbs down from their perspective and why and how it relates to our exact bylaw. You take that to the zoning board of appeals. They have the meeting we had today again. Hopefully you get approved. And then when you get approved, they write like an improvement summary, and they send that to zoning, and then you can get your permit. As far as the permit goes, when you fill out the permit application, it asks, because we don't fall within the guidelines, we passed the design review board today, and they gave us 4 or 5 very specific things, which I'll mention in a sec here, as to what we need to ask for. So we are actually asking for a special permit, I believe is the actual language. And let's see, yeah, special permit. A variance / special permit. They have this form that the zoning people chase you out of the office telling you that you need to have a lawyer fill it out and this and that, and that's part of the sort of the circus of this whole process. Then I explained to them that it's a town building and our lawyer is the town lawyer, so they're the same person. So they still chase you out of the room. They just scream at everybody they need a lawyer. I just hate to say it, that's the way they behave. Unfortunately, but so they gave me this form. It said, get a lawyer. I did that whole conversation. I ended up getting it defined the design review board. We went through the design review board. They said, no, you don't need a lawyer. Here's exactly what you need. So they're writing a summary of our meeting today, telling me how to fill out the next application, which is good. And so basically it says, we're asking for a special permit based on, and it gives like the itemized numbers of the laws, like, bylaw number, blah, 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 condition, whatever. And so the result of our meeting today is they're basically giving me the text for the application for the next meeting. So they're going to say that we reviewed the sign thing and we talked about all the details, and here's our recommendation. And I think we have 4 bullet points we're expecting in our letter that I'm going to get by the end of the week. And then that basically just goes right into the copy and paste into the application. This is what we're asking for exactly on the official filing. So what are we asking for? We're asking for a special permit for a projection sign, which is required by the bylaw. It is, most times granted. So it's a special permit, but it's not a big deal. It's just any projection bracket sign in the town of Wakefield needs a special permit. So that's the crux of it, what we're doing. Why do we need a special permit? Well, it's got a bracket. That's one reason. Another reason is because we're oversized. The law is written such that the sign can be no bigger than 9.5 square feet in area. Our sign is 13 square feet in area. However, the design review board approved it because it is in scale with the building. The first iteration, which comes in compliance with the way the law is written, is under scale for the building. So it looked kind of silly. It looked like a dollhouse sign on a big giant building. So the design review board approved our 13-foot square foot sign that was presented to them today that we're putting in our application, because it is in scale with the building, but it is inconsistent with the law, hence the reason why we need the special permit, and this is condition number 2. Condition number 3 that we need a special permit for is because the height of our sign is at 14 feet, or no, is at 17 feet 3 inches. And the sign bylaw says no higher than 14 feet. And the reason that the sign bylaw says that, after lots of discussion and post-meeting discussion, is because there was a lot of people with buildings in town, I guess, that were hanging signs off their roofs with like cables. And they would hang it off the cable and they'd be up really high, and they had really big signs, which is part of the second condition that we had to ask for. But they would put them up super high because they would try to cheap out on it and hang them off the top of the building. And so they set a height for what they thought was acceptable, and that's 14 feet. However, the design review board has given us a recommendation of exception for 17 feet, because where our sign is going to connect to the building is going to be above the keystone on, you know, that, what do you call it, cement strip that's across the top?
Yep.
So you've got like the door, then you've got the keystone, which is the little top thing, just like in our logo. And then above that, you have the strip of concrete. And so, what do you call it? So the reason that ours needs to hang at 17 feet is for scale. And that's really the only place that it makes sense. And if we brought it down, we'd be interfering with the architectural details of the actual building. So basically, that's the place it needs to go. The law doesn't say that, so we provided a bunch of reasons why it needs to go there, and we have a recommendation that our reasoning is in scale and makes sense. The next condition of our permit is there's a condition that says the signs need to be 3 inches thick. Our sign is 5 inches thick. However, the law doesn't say where you measure the 3 inches from. So our application and our meeting today, what they said was, your thickness is fine. However, the law says 3, yours is 5, but it doesn't say where it's measured from. So when you put in your application, you're going to say that we're 3 inches from this and this, and that the bevels and this are 5 inches, and identify all that and disclose it out front so that you can tell them where you're measuring your 3 inches from. And there's not a problem there, but they suggested that just to counter anybody who tried to knock it off and say, oh, you didn't hit this spec. We did hit the spec, and we're explaining how, because we're explaining where we're measuring it, and it's all in context with the size of the sign, which, you know, they're 3 inches. Again, we're an oversized sign, and we're going up higher, and we're on a special permit. So they just said, please specify that so that you don't get knocked off for a non-issue because of wording.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Mhm.
Well, actually, no, it doesn't,
Okay.
but I understand what you're saying.
Well, I think it has something to do, I mean, yeah, okay.
Just,
Good
yeah.
But these are the conditions. So we went through and we talked about it. You know, these are our conditions. We need a special permit. Our sign is oversized, but it's appropriately sized for our building. Our sign is oversized based on the definitions in the law. It's not oversized for the building.
Right.
So our height is in proportion and is in scale with the building, but it differs from what it says in the law, but the law was written for a different application. The good news is they approved the design. We just had to really go over everything. Oh, and then the next, it's not a condition, it's just a detail, is the lighting fixture. The lighting fixture is specified to be at a certain lumens rating that I don't have in front of me, but it's nearby. Basically, it's an LED light fixture, and they want it to be to mimic natural or regular light. So there's like a hertz rating. I want to say 30,000 hertz or 60,000 hertz or something. It's in the details of all the stuff that we have, but basically they don't want a blue light on there. They want, you know, the light like something that looks like a regular light bulb as far as lighting up the sign. So they don't want it to be, you know, like those, you know, like people that have those beady headlights when you're driving that have the high powered, you know, blue things. So they don't want that. They specify the exact range of what they want the color to come out at.
And color spectrum too, because light can be anywhere from blue to orange to all kinds of things. So yeah, color spectrum.
Right. So anyway, so that's what happened at our special permit meeting. The good news is, so those are the down and dirty details. And the good news is it was a successful meeting. What happens next in our fantasy world is, so we were approved from the first step. I will get the meeting summary today or by the end of the week, saying with our recommendations that has the text that goes on to our application. At the beginning of next week, I will file our application with the Zoning Board of Appeals. That application has to be filed by November 17th, which is a week from next Wednesday, to get on the agenda, believe it or not, for the December 16th meeting. Okay, so there's a lot of time stuff here that if you don't get it right, it can take you forever. So we got approval today. We're going to get on the agenda for December 16th, which we have to do by November 17th. And the reason for that is once we get on the agenda by November 17th, the Zoning Board of Appeals and the building department or whatever, they send out a notice to any abutter within 200 feet. And what do you call it? The abutters get a notice that on December 16th, we're going to have a hearing about our sign. And if they have anything to say about it, you know, they can come on December 16th and say it. When we go to the meeting on December 16th, which would probably be me and Bob, we're going to just do the same thing we did today. We're going to say, hi, here's what we're here for. Here's our thing. They're going to have our application that have those conditions like, here's what our size is. Here's our recommendation. Here's why we're this tall. Here's our recommendation. Here's our light color. Here's all this stuff. Here's our recommendation. After the abutters have been notified, which will happen sometime around between November 17th and a couple days after, again, they can come to the meeting on December 16th. Hopefully there's no questions because we come in with a recommendation. That board gets to review it. Assuming nobody comes in with a big complaint, we'll get approved. When we get approved, we then have to wait for the summary statement from the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have one coming this week from the Design Review Board. We'll have one from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Once we have that, we can hand it in and apply for our permit, which will be granted because we have all the authorizations. Big long process. Now, once we get our permit, let's say by the end of December, maybe early January, depending on how fast they write their summary of the December 16th meeting, the sign then needs to be built. And, you know, so the fabrication of the sign is going to take probably 3 or 4 weeks. So our sign, once we get a permit, and this is, I was talking to Bob today, you know, I mean, we don't think anything bad's going to happen on December 16th. We've really, all the hard work got finished pretty much today, but you just never know. And so like, I mean, and I'm going to ask for a vote on the invoice, but let's say something happened. We could be stuck with a sign, you know, so do we tell them to fabricate the sign now? We should probably wait till we have the permit in hand.
No, you want to wait. Absolutely. Yeah. Makes sense to wait.
So that's that. So let's say we get our permit by the end of the year. Then it's going to take a month to build the sign, and then we can install it sometime in February or early March.
That's fine.
And then we'll be there. And there'll be a little bit more that'll come up because something that's not in our, what do you call it? Not in our current invoice. So our current invoice, does everybody have a copy of the invoice from before? Let me share my screen again. Hopefully this works okay without sending you pictures of toilets. All right, so screen share, and we'll search. Oh, I see the one you guys have. That's why. All right, all right. I'm gonna put it back up, but hang on for a sec. All right, so that's can you see me switching my screen? Did it switch?
No.
You see the toilets again.
Ah. All right, I'm gonna unshare the screen so you don't have to look at the toilets, and I'll just read it to you. I've sent this to everybody. You're sharing, new share, pause sharing. All right, is it gone? Stop share. Okay.
Yep.
So the invoice that was sent to us for the increased sign was $5,875, which we've talked about. We didn't have enough people for a vote last time. That number will change likely by several hundreds of dollars. And the reason why is that Bob Sardella, to attend these meetings, gets paid an hourly rate, which is on here. It's just $65 an hour. Not really a big deal because it's only going to be a couple hours. So we probably got billed an hour for today. We'll get billed an hour for the next meeting. And then the rest of it's all in the sign. The other thing that's not in here is we may or may not have to pay some electrician fees to wire the light. The wires are already there, and there's a town electrician. So this should be able to be handled internally. But if for some reason it can't, we'll have to pay for that. But we're sitting just under 6,000 right now. I would say, reasonably expect that the charge could go up into the $7,000 ballpark, depending on things that may happen to us along the way. And so I guess I'm going to ask if anybody has any objections to this bill that they want to talk about right now before I ask for a vote to approve the sign funding. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask for a vote for approval for, we'll say somewhere in the ballpark of $6,000 or $7,000, not to exceed, say, $8,000. I don't think we'll ever get close to that, but I just want to put that in the language of it just in case something happens and it's $7,001 or something. But I don't expect it to be higher than that. So all in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Cool. All right, so seeing that nobody's opposed, it's what do you call it? So the funding has been officially approved with the proper amount of people tonight. So that's good to keep this project going. And let's see here. Clickety click, click, click. So this is, we are still on item number 6, front projection sign, invoice review. We just did that and we approved the funding and we discussed the ZBA process. To close out item number 6 of our agenda, front projection sign, invoice review, and ZBA process. Does anybody have anything further they'd like to say, ask, etc. for now? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to number 7, which is somewhat of a standing item with the that I've been keeping on the agenda as far as funding in the future. And I talked to Jonathan, and I imagine he's going to chime in here. We've talked a lot about ADA compliance. We talked about handicap entrances and doors, and Jonathan has talked to Dan Benjamin, who's, I believe, he's either the chairman or on the, I don't know the name of his committee, disabilities or something. It's something to do with handicap accessibility. Jonathan, what's the name of his committee?
Yeah, so he's not actually on the committee, but is pretty involved with it, and his wife Lois is one of the committee members, and so forth. But just as context, he had a conversation with someone from the Mass Office on Disabilities at the state level, and there is a grant program that the state runs for handicap accessibility projects, and the gentleman that Dan had talked to had mentioned that. They actually historically haven't gotten a whole lot of applications for those grants, and that they do apparently have funding available. And so I had, Dan had brought the issue to me just in general from a town perspective. And so I had reached out to Chris and said, this might be something that, we should look at for ACE, either to fund, any of the costs for the handicap accessible door that we don't have funding for, or to think kind of future state about elevators and things like that.
And I think at this point we have funding for our door, so it wouldn't be on this rear door project. And what I said to Jonathan was that we definitely need help with elevator funding. That's where we're going after we get this stuff done. So if there's money available, I mean, we're so far along and we have funding for our rear door. So that part's there. But for the elevator, we need all the help we can get. In a year or two's time, when Envision covers the front of our door, you know, we may want a handicap front door if the sidewalks and everything get done in 2 years, and can they pay for that? But you know, that's just similar to our rear door. It's a door, and it's one of those automatic openers, and it's a ramp, and you know, it's potentially, you know, $50,000-$60,000 of something that at that point we won't have money for, and we're forecasting out in the future. But between that and the elevator, you know, if there's an opportunity there, we should obviously grab it. Any of these opportunities, you know, just getting to where we've gotten on all these projects require a tremendous amount of time. So even if they did have money right now, chances are we'd go through 6 months or a year process to get on the list for consideration, I would guess. I haven't seen anything in funding world that's ever moved faster than that. However, we do have funding for our current projects, so it's a non-issue on those, but it's definitely a potential opportunity for the future for our many needs that'll be coming up, especially a front door and an elevator. Jonathan, you have anything more on that one? I'm not going to jump into something else that we talked about, or I mentioned to you.
I don't have any more. No, I know Dan was going to reach out again to the Mass Office on Disability to try to get some more information, but I haven't heard anything from him yet about that.
Okay. Well, cool. So we'll see what happens there. You know, as a part of an ongoing dialogue that I've had with a lot of people offline, and we touched on in some meetings in the past, something that I've been thinking about, I mentioned it to Jonathan in an email, is there's a lot of towns that, let me see if I'm going to pull it up on my other window here. Across the country, there's art in public places. There's a bunch of things that do with community, cultural, and art centers. And some of them have what's called it's like an arts redevelopment fee built into their permitting process. So the idea that I sort of just pitch out for you to think about, and for us to come back to at some point, is potentially proposing some sort of arts redevelopment type fee to the town council. And the idea would be that probably via a mechanism like town meeting or something, or I don't really know exactly, but there's a lot of construction in Wakefield. You know, there's condos going up everywhere. Some people call it the Maldenification of Wakefield. Whatever your take on it, you know, it's just the way it is. Life's going to move on. Buildings are going to be built. Properties are going to be redeveloped, and there's a lot of that goes on in Wakefield. So, what if, you know, they're talking about putting in all these units on, say, the lake and Wakefield Office Park. What if on the books we went through the motions to put in an arts redevelopment fee as part of the permitting process? The idea would be when they put in a 500 units or whatever they're going to put in on the lake, they would pay this sort of, it's like an impact fee. It'd be a small derivative, and there's research that needs to be done with other communities and other applications on this. But the idea would be every year, kind of like how WCAT gets the funding off of the cable bills, we would get the arts redevelopment money, and that would create an ongoing revenue stream for ACE. So we've got this building. So let's say there was, you know, 0.1% or whatever the fee is, it wouldn't be large. And again, that's something that requires research. But, you know, you want to build 500 units on the lake? Well, you're going to pay this arts redevelopment fee. How does that work? Well, you pay the fee because you're not going to not pay it because you want to do it. You know, you don't not pay for your electrical inspector. You don't not pay for that. But if the community decides that they're interested in reinvesting in themselves, and they approve that, you know, there's a redevelopment fee that goes into this arts redevelopment fund, that would then be a long-term revenue source for us for operating expenses. Is the idea. It's beyond an idea. It's implemented in lots of places, just not here. I don't have any local examples yet. This is just something I've come across in the last 4 or 5 months, and I've had it in a draft email to bring into one of our meetings. And I just, when Jonathan started talking about Dan and the potential money for the elevator, I saw sort of an opening to say, hey, and I threw that at him, and I throw that at you all to just say, what do you think?
I think it's a great idea. If there's an opportunity to be able to get even, you know, just a modest revenue stream for operating expenses, whether it's, you know, for publicity or building improvements, or, you know, to tie into some of the, maybe the elevator and anything else that we have coming up. And it, and it comes from, construction and other kinds of projects in the town. This is for the benefit of the town. So I think I would love to see how this has worked elsewhere, and see how we could start to pursue this.
Agreed. Obviously I'm on board because I brought it up and I've mentioned it.
I agree too.
Yeah, I agree. Sounds great.
So what I would implore people to do is to Google around, look it up, see if you can find examples. I don't want to be a one-man team working on this. I think this is an idea that is good. With good ideas comes also resistance. I'm sure people that have to pay the fee aren't going to be interested in it.
It's called a read. What is it what's it typically called? Like, what are key words to use to be able to investigate? Is it
community redevelopment fee, community arts redevelopment fee? I'll have to do a little more research and I'll send it out to people in an email. I'm just at the beginning stages of knowledge in this area. It started sort of, I think some of you know that I went out to Fallbrook, California, which is a big arts town in California and San Diego area in August. And I was looking at their art center and I visited a few other art centers in California. And I started Googling around and there's art in public places that's done. I think Fallbrook had one. That's kind of how I got to it. And I talked to their executive director of the art center out there about just things that were going on. And they had this art in public places project, which is like the community art that we talked about with Envision and all that sort of stuff. But during those conversations of the cool things they were doing and installations they were doing, the funding was coming from these redevelopment fees. They were like, oh, well, they didn't say a grant, but it was like a grant, we get $100,000 a year for, to develop these things and that. And it comes in from a permitting structure that happens elsewhere in the government. To reinvest in the community. And so that's sort of where I came across it was visiting Fallbrook in San Diego County, San Clemente in August.
Sometimes developers are interested in something like that because anything that beautifies the community, they're trying to market 500 or 400 or 200 units. Anything that improves the town is in the long term beneficial to them as far as selling their or renting their units. So I don't think it's as far-fetched, especially if it's been done in other communities around here. It would be certainly something to look into if anybody's done it in a local town.
Agreed.
Or a Massachusetts town.
Agreed. I mean, I sit here and I look and, I'm doing all this tactical work on our current projects, but, I look at the strategic vision of, we've been here now, at least me, Kathy and Joy have been here for going on, is it 5 years or 6 years? And we've gotten a couple $100,000 in money, which we're very thankful for. And we've learned things like the Arts Collaborative, we need to have an in-house arts group because it makes us look better. And we've learned these things, but we've gotten 2 good hits of money. But that was during great times, and we're not in great times anymore. And how the hell are we going to do an elevator? That the options when you look at that are like, are we going to ask the town people for money? Well, I mean, we can, but that's very challenging. If we did it, what other ways are there? Well, there's the Cummings Foundation, which we've talked about in the past. They give out grants around $100,000, but there's a lot of work for that. And it's a lot of work to get any of this money. But what could we do that would be ongoing revenue? How would that work? And it's like, this sounds like something. Jonathan, have you ever heard of this or seen it or?
I've heard of different types of sort of linkage fees tied to development. In some cases, or actually I'd said in a lot of cases where I've heard about it locally, it's tied to more of the conditions around sort of approving a particular project. And we do some of that today. If the ZBA is approving a large project, there'll be certain, types of mitigation that will be kind of a condition of their approval, whether it's, money for traffic improvement or what have you. I think this is one where I'm very interested in the concept. I think there's probably a lot of research that we would need to do just to understand, how this has been affected locally, because, you know, our ability to kind of implement something like this probably looks a little different under Massachusetts state law than it does under California state law. And so, you know, I think if we can kind of find those examples of some local communities or some ideas that we can leverage, you know, within Massachusetts, I think that'll help sort of frame this out into, you know, into an idea that's potentially implementable.
Cool. Doug, any thoughts? Oh, you muted? Are you there, Doug?
No, I'm trying to. Sometimes you can press space to unmute, and sometimes it doesn't work. But no, I mean, it definitely sounds great. I agree with what everybody says. It'd be interesting to see what other communities, especially those in Massachusetts, have been able to do with something like this. And but you know, no matter what, it's a great idea to look into.
Especially, I think that if it's reoccurring.
Yeah, it becomes the standard. It's not like, and like Jonathan, you were saying you tag it to a project. I'm saying let's tag it to all projects.
Like I'm trying to remember, I think Shaw's paid like a good amount of money to the West Ward History Museum project. Like I want a lot of money. I can't remember the details, but it was almost like they pay this money or you can't build it, you know? So, and it really gave them a good boost. I just don't remember how much they paid, but that was a one-hit wonder. Right. It would be nice if it could be a reoccurring thing. But then who would fight over the money?
Well, that's the other thing. It's like, let's say we did all the legwork to get this together. I mean, I think what would end up happening is like, let's say if we all of a sudden scraped up, let's say the number was all of a sudden there was $100,000 in money a year that was coming in. I think you could bet your bottom dollar that there'd be 10 other groups asking for a split, even though we did all the work, which is not necessarily the end of the world because that's just sort of the way it is. Everybody needs money.
Yeah, I'd love to see some models of how this has worked elsewhere, as people are saying, you know, either in the state or, you know, not in the state, just to even start to use that as a springboard.
Yeah. And Jonathan, I'd actually like to ask you to implore, as discussions come up, you know, in the future, regarding there's the one on the lake, but there's a whole bunch of other development going on, to maybe, you know, assuming that you're supportive of this, insert this into some of the conversations where it might be potentially useful for the development. You know, just, I mean, we got to get the word around. I mean, we're the only ones who know about it right now. You know, we're going to have to sell it. So people are going to have to know about it. So as, you know, as a guy that, you know, makes his career in marketing, you know, there's a thing called ADA, you know, awareness, interest, desire, and action. We are currently in the beginning of the stages of marketing, which is awareness and letting people know that this is a thing. And then maybe in 6 months, they'll be interested in it. And then maybe a few months later, they'll actually care. And then ultimately, we'd end up at the, you know, AIDA, we'd end up at the action, which would be implementing the fee. You know, right now we gotta find out, we have to create awareness and we have to do more research because we don't have we have just surface level awareness of the concept at the moment. So that's all I've got on that. If does anybody have anything else to say as far as recurring revenue for the ACE committee moving forward, or that idea or other? All right. Hearing none, I will say that number 7, nonprofit Friends of ACE, other funding ideas, then Benjamin, elevator, community redevelopment, concept, all that stuff on item number 7 is complete. Moving on to item number 8, unanticipated topics. Does anybody have anything they wish to discuss? All right, don't all speak at once. All right, that is all I have. Assuming that there are no objections, I'm gonna say all in favor of ending the meeting, say aye.
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 This concludes today's edition of the Albion Cultural Exchange Committee.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you,
everybody.
Good night.
Take care.